43 years ago, I was ordained a priest for the Diocese of Buffalo, New York. In my first year, the Bishop of Buffalo sent me here to Savannah, Georgia on a lend-lease program. Spent a year in Valdosta, and then I was sent to the Isle of Hope, St. John Vianney Seminary, high school seminary, and there I met a priest named Father John Fitzpatrick. Our secretary was a very young lady named Betty Purdy, and at the cathedral, a young lady named Patty Schreck played the organ. I suspect those ladies must have retired long ago. Well, I taught algebra and geometry, and Father John taught history and English. And our claim to fame was that the seminary produced, I believe, 3 priests, and, of course, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Father John, in subsequent years, would argue about who was more influential in the career of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. I argued that any honest lawyer will tell you that geometry and algebra shapes the legal mind. Father John would say that history and being able to write and speak was much more important. A few years ago, I told him that in Kennebunkport, when the older and wiser President Bush announced Clarence Thomas's nomination, as Clarence came to the microphone, he turned away a bit and he said, "I owe my success to Father Ben Werner." Father John said he was simply clearing his throat. "You Danky." When he would get annoyed with me, he'd call me Danky. And I only had to ask him once what that meant. As Father Lucree mentioned, John was into theatrics, and I believe he was capable of Broadway and Hollywood. He had a talent that I have never ever seen elsewhere. He wanted to put on a passion play, so he sent me to Georgia Pacific, and they donated an 8-foot-high roll of craft paper. And on the floor of the stage, he cut out 15 feet pieces of this paper, and he would draw what he wanted as a background to the scene in the plays. And I could paint in with watercolors the square stuff and the rectangular stuff, but he had to do anything that had a curve to it. Then we would roll up this paper with string, and the changes of the scenes, we would simply let the string go, and the 8-foot scene would come down to the floor of the stage. He had an innate sense for the dramatic. The Last Supper scene, he had a hole cut out below Jesus' plate. And as Jesus lifted up the plate with the loaf of bread, all of the lights in the entire place went out, and one spotlight underneath the table came on and caught Jesus' chin and the loaf of bread as he offered it. He performed in the community productions, particularly in Augusta. I remember he was the fiddler in Fiddler on the Roof, and played the lead in Oliver Twist. I remember one time he showed me his little dance where the lead said to the kids, "You've got to pick a pocket or two," and he delighted in the plays. Later years, we would go for 2 weeks to Stratford, Ontario, every fall. And when I would get tired of trying to catch Shakespeare's words, I would simply look at his face, and his face glowed. He was the playwright, the actor. He was the director. We had a lot of fun. And probably the best thing I ever did for him was several years ago. We were in the bookstore, and he looked up at this huge book, The History of the Celts. And it was so high, I guess they figured nobody'd ever buy it, that the lady had to climb up there and get it, and he looked at it and he said, "This is magnificent, but it's too expensive. I can't buy it." So the next couple of days when he was taking a nap, I went down and bought it and sent it by Canadian UPS down to Atlanta. Many times he told me how much he enjoyed it. John was Irish through and through, and so I'd like to finish by doing the Irish blessing. If you would respond, God bless him. May the road ever rise to meet him, the wind be ever at his back, the sun shine warm upon his face, the rains fall soft upon his fields. May the hand of a friend ever be near him. May God fill his heart with gladness to cheer him. May all his skies be blue, and all his dreams be seen, and all his friends be true, and most of heaven be green. And until that time we meet again, may God hold him in the palm of his hand.